herb night to get on this herb mic. You know I'm alert, right? You know that it ain't nothing to serve, right? And I'll be killing tracks to the
Smackdown, June 23rd. It was bad. It was pretty bad. It sucked. Let's talk about this thing because we got to. So there's two notes apparently. One was the interview that LA Knight did where he talked about being Max Dupree because there was concerns about his age, which of course everybody already knew. I mean, I don't know why people think that this kind of stuff is breaking news. Anybody with a functioning brain could have seen that the reason they made him a manager is because he was old. But here is the quote. This is from, I guess he talked to the Daily Mail, which is, I guess it's in the UK. He says, I'm killing it in NXT is crazy, just like the big reactions. The way I turned from big time heel in the summertime to big time babyface by the winter. It's not piped in, it's not prefab reactions, all organic, real stuff happening. I came up for a dark match. I get the attention of the right people. Hey, who is this guy? Then the age thing comes up. Oh no, he's 40. Danger. But I'm not the average 40-year-old. I haven't gone through the ringer. I haven't had a bunch of surgeries or injuries to knock on that wood. I've lived a good youthful life in a certain sense, and I've taken care of myself in a way I would say most don't. And also, I look at a certain way where obviously I've got somebody's attention. But that number came up, and it was like, well, let's maybe make him a manager. So some things happened there. It was not my cup of tea, and definitely I don't think it was for me. But somehow there I was. Some things happened that we don't need to go into, and then eventually LA Knight was back. All right. So clearly it was like, oh yeah, Vince got the idea to use him because he's good at talking. But generally speaking, he's kind of old. So what do we do with this old guy? Now, there's an interesting debate, interesting discussion around this. Usually you just be like, well, he's old. I mean, what more can you do? But there have been some people who have tried to utilize what I call the DDP rule. You know, DDP started in WCW at 35, or Batista, who was already, I think, a granddad when he main evented WrestleMania. He was I think he was 34 or 35 at that point in time. LA Knight is 40, on the nose 40, I believe. He'll probably be 41 this year. But he's been in the business for a long time, which is something that you can't say about DDP when he was 35. He wasn't in the business for a long time. And neither was Batista. Batista wasn't in the business for a long time either when he got to the main event of WrestleMania at around 35. And he was basically on his, third year in the business, not counting OVW time, which if he was counting OVW, I think it would have been 5 years in the business. Like he started wrestling late too, but not as late as DDP, but he started late too. So even though LA Knight didn't start late, because LA Knight was in NXT or FCW back in 2012, if I remember correctly. He was like roommates with John Moxley or something like that. So he's been around for a while. But they put the brake on him because of how old he was. Was that fair? Well, typically I would say no. I think that you should use people to their maximum potential. At the same time, however, it depends on what you're trying to do. Again, when a roster is like a team, what do you need? Okay, so if you need somebody to help other people get over, then that's a good role. I mean, it's a job. I mean, better than nothing. But it's not even really the problem that they made him a manager. They made him a manager for two guys who was never going to go anywhere. It was for Mansoir and Massey. Those guys were never going anywhere. That meant nothing. If he was like the manager for Austin Theory, or he was the manager for somebody who had a future, then I would probably be a little bit more like, so what if he was a manager for a little while? I still thought he was going to wrestle because he's kind of jacked. But it was a complete waste because the guys that they paired him with were no good. They just suck. So I'm glad that LA Knight's back. It's perfectly fine. They got rid of the Max Dupree thing. I don't like how they did it, but it's whatever. It's fine. So a lot of people are like, oh, it was a disaster. At the same time, we got to go back to what did you need? if you're looking for the future, 40-year-olds are not the future. They're not even really the present, unless they've been in the seat for a long time. Like Roman Reigns is 38. He's been in the chair for a long time though. He's been there since, 2014, maybe 2015. So he's been, in this spot for a while. So it's not a big deal for him to be 40-year-olds and be a top guy, because he's been there long before he was 40. Same thing you could say for Seth Rollins. But you're talking about getting a guy to that point. And he's 40. I don't know. Now, am I against LA Knight being a top guy? No. Do I think he's DDP of this generation? Possibly. I'm not entirely sure what that means. Because there was some politics to DDP getting as far as he was too, because DDP was friends with Eric Bischoff. And I don't want to denigrate DDP and all his hard work and everything that he did, but he had that friendship with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. He was friends with Scott Hall from AWA. He had connections. So it wasn't just like he worked his ass off and got there. It was like, yeah, he worked his ass off. But it was also people willing to do him a favor when he was 37 or something like that in the mid card of WCW. Like, if you know the story, you know that it was actually Scott Hall. It was Scott Hall's idea to take the diamond cutter and to make DDP be the first guy who really gets over on the NWO. And that led to, his feud with the NWO, his feud with Randy Savage. And then, of course, it was Randy Savage who, volunteered to take the diamond cutter and lose in the middle of the ring at a pay-per-view. So that's the stuff that made DDP. It wasn't that DDP busted his ass. It was DDP's friends was like, hey, I want to see this guy win. And I want to see them push this guy. And so, therefore, they did whatever was necessary to get there. LA Knight didn't quite have that. It does not quite have that. Batista had Flair. He had Triple H, to help him along. And then even then, the fans didn't like Batista's matches. And even if you ask them today, they still hate Batista. Even though he was, they use him as a reason to push any guy over 30 now. But I liked Batista personally. I didn't think he was too bad. I like DDP too. And I like LA Knight. But we're talking about 40-year-old guys who just getting started. The one thing that LA Knight has over them that is to his great benefit is his charisma and his mic skills. Because he is so good in a microphone, it doesn't matter that he's 40, And that's what led him to getting over so quickly. Because he's really good on the microphone. And they just had to just ride the wave. Just let it do what it was going to do. He was jobbing out, losing a lot, in a feud with Bray Wyatt that wasn't going anywhere. But he managed to win the audience over with his promos. And that's what matters at the end of the day. Yes, age matters. I said the same thing when Taya Valkyrie, she got fired. And she's like in her late 30s. And she got fired from NXT. And Triple H, Vince went through and fired a bunch of over 35-year-olds. And he just managed to just take everybody who was old from NXT, like Damian Priest and all these people, and just slot them somewhere in the mid-card of WWE. Karrion Kross, he fired him. Damian Priest, slot him somewhere. Keith Lee fired him. Santos Escobar is probably going to be stuck in NXT for a long time if it wasn't for Triple H coming in. So I'll give Triple H that +1, that he probably saved LA Knight. And it's leading to a pretty good run. Okay, so hopefully LA Knight is correct and he doesn't have a lot of a beat up body and he can handle it, because you got him for like 5 or 6 years, I think. And I think 5 or 6 years as a top guy, probably not the top guy, but a top guy, is pretty solid. I think he could be a top heel for sure, especially on Raw where they need it. Okay. So the second thing has been what's been blowing up all day is that Vince went through and changed some things on SmackDown. For instance, it was supposed to be a triple threat match between LA Knight, Butch, and Santos Escobar, and that match was canceled and replaced with Rey Mysterio and LA Knight. And then there was also supposed to be a Shotzi versus Bayley match in which Bayley was going to put her Money in the Bank shot on the line. This was built up last week. And then there was Corbin and Cameron Grimes. I think they were supposed to have a thing. I don't know if it was a match or a segment or something. That got cut too. And a lot of people have led to believe that, you know, because those things were cut from SmackDown, that this show sucked because Triple H's vision was tampered with. There's nothing that I just mentioned that was going to change the quality of this show. Nothing. For starters, you really thought Bayley was going to lose her spot in the Money in the Bank to Shotzi? We've already seen how Shotzi performs in the Money in the Bank, and she's not ready. Clearly, she's not ready. She has no momentum. She's barely over. People barely even respond to her. So I get that Bayley, and this comes from like one of the dirt sheets, that Bayley was doing media for this match or whatever, which you do media for SmackDown, and card always subject to change. But that's what led to everybody being frustrated. Oh, people are frustrated. Remember, superstars are frustrated. It's like, well, they can be as frustrated as they want. A lot of these ideas were dumb. Like, that Bayley match was dumb. You know, clearly it was just a waste of time. Even if you wanted to say, oh, Shotzi's going to win, it's still dumb. It was dumb. Bayley should be in the match. You know, she doesn't need to be in there, but they need the star power. You know, so if you wanted to further the storyline between Bayley and Io, which is the point of this thing, you do it some other time, you know. The only thing I don't like about that is that was at least built up on the show, and you don't build things up on television and then not deliver on them. I do not like that. That's a lack of continuity. That doesn't make sense. That's going to lead people who are watching the show to think, hey, where did that match go? And then you got to go back and be like, oh, yeah, it was canceled. It's like, yeah, it was canceled because it never should have been booked. You know, like it never should have been booked. The triple threat match between Butch and Santos and LA Knight never should have been booked. Never should have been booked. There was nothing to be gained or lost in that match. Why did it have to happen? It didn't need to happen. And Baron Corbin was about to wrestle Cameron Grimes and essentially lose, right? But Baron Corbin is about to wrestle Carmelo Hayes on NXT. So is he going to wrestle Cameron Grimes and get embarrassed? Because remember, last time he wrestled Cameron Grimes, he lost in like 4 seconds. He's going to wrestle Cameron Grimes, lose, and then go and wrestle the NXT champion on NXT TV. And I know people don't care about that kind of stuff, but it's something you should consider. You know, like if you've already booked this guy to wrestle in the main event of a show for a championship, he probably shouldn't be losing on TV. Now, I know that Vince don't care about that because he's done that before. He's done that 100 times before. So it's not like he had like this genius idea to protect Baron Corbin. He probably just didn't like the match. He probably just doesn't like the people involved, which is fine because there's nothing interesting about Cameron Grimes right now, and Baron Corbin sucks. So it is what it is. Apparently the Bayley Shotzi match was replaced with the Charlotte Lacey Evans match, which isn't much better, but at least it put some heat on Charlotte and Asuka, because the match was short, which made it fine, and they did something after the match to actually garner some heat. So, okay, at least they did something there that made sense in terms of story. But the rest of this stuff, again, it doesn't mean anything. And the idea that this has become a routine after every Dynamite, it's, you know, so-and-so is upset with CM Punk. After every WWE show, it's so-and-so is upset with Vince McMahon. This is what Vince McMahon changed. It's like people are doing this stuff for clicks. They don't even know whether that's real or not. It's for clicks. You know, when Ricochet says, oh yeah, Vince is, you know, everybody goes to him for advice and yada, yada, yada. It's like, we already knew that. They've been talking about that for 6 months. He said that when he sold the company, he said essentially that he's still going to be involved, just not going to get in the weeds. I mean, this isn't news. And that's the thing that really kind of like floors me, is that people act like this stuff is news. It's not news. We already knew that. All right. And plus a lot of this stuff, tell me when something major happens. You know, Vince stepped in and said that Seth Rollins had to lose the title to Braun Breaker, and then Triple H had to come in and stop it. That's something that, I want to click on. I don't give a shit about him canceling a stupid segment or a dumb match that nobody wanted to watch anyway. I don't care about any of that crap. If it's something major, sure. If it's something minor, which is rearranging matches, which is going to happen on pretty much every show, I don't care about that. Now, cutting matches that were promoted, okay. We might, all right, you want to say Bayley and Shotzi didn't happen because of the Vince McMahon stepping in or whatever. All right, fine, because at least you explaining why the promoted match did not occur. But everything else is like, so what? So what? We didn't get Cameron Grimes versus Baron Corbin, or they didn't do anything. Would that have improved this show? Not really, no. It wouldn't have helped at all. And besides, there's so many holes in this show anyway, where you just kind of like, where's this guy? Where's that guy? And the stuff that they did push out, a lot of it was boring tripe. It's like, I didn't care. I didn't think it mattered anyway. All right, let's get into this show. All right, so the Usos. The Usos are in your city. They talk about families. They shouldn't fight. They should hold each other down. They should help each other. And that they still love Roman. Roman is the tribal chief. They're willing to do whatever for him. Attack people for him. He say jump. They say they do it. But then he disrespected them. And when the bloodline was at their most dangerous is when they was run on respect. Once you disrespect us, you're on the island all by yourself at that point. Then Jay specifically says that they'll always forgive Roman, but what they don't respect is those who come from the outside, those who drive the wedge. And he started talking about that snake, Paul Heyman. So both Jimmy and Jay have targeted Paul Heyman, blame the Jew, for everything. What a classic Jew segment. We found a middleman in order to blame. Oh, Roman, it's not your fault. We're just going to blame the nearest Jew. I wonder do they realize he did that. Anyway, they talked about fighting their family, and afterwards, perhaps Roman waking up and all that kind of stuff. But it was a good segment. I thought it was a really good segment. Unfortunately, there was a big logic hole in the promo. For instance, they never once mentioned that Solo was their brother and that they love him too and they wish he would turn around. There was no sympathy at all for Solo. There was no conversation at all for Solo. In fact, Solo Sikoa got into he bumped Ridge Holland, or Ridge Holland bumped into him, however this happened. It was stupid. And it led to Solo Sikoa, Samoan Spike, and Ridge Holland, and he was coughing up chicken nuggets or something. I don't know. At that point, Sheamus wanted to fight. Solo Sikoa came out there, challenged him to a match. They had the match later in the main event, which was the sort of rejiggered main event. I got a feeling this wasn't the original main event for this show. And Sheamus and Solo Sikoa went out there, they just kind of beat each other up a little bit. Solo Sikoa did the hip attack through the barricade to sort of end Sheamus's night. So the referee stopped the match. Technically, I believe it was a no contest. The medics and all of them come down to help Sheamus. Solo Sikoa tries to continue the beating on Sheamus, and then the Usos, 2-on-1, came down to the ringside and beat up on Solo Sikoa. No compunction about beating up their little brother. No hand-wringing about that, which makes this whole family thing ring hollow. And that's something that I think is a huge miss. It's something that is a huge miss for their storyline. Is Solo Sikoa is their brother. Why are we just acting like he's some hired goon? He's literally their little brother. They should be trying to, get him on their side, win them over. I get that Solo made his decision, several weeks ago when he attacked Jimmy. He made his decision. But the idea should be that you don't give up on anybody. You know, like that's the whole thing. Like they're sitting here talking about Roman Reigns, you the tribal chief. We forgive you. It's like, but you can't forgive your own brother. Like we should. Why you have all the smoke in the world for Solo, but when it comes for Roman, oh, you know, big cuz just doing what he do. It's like, nah, you know, it should definitely be a little bit more sympathy towards Solo. And maybe that will start after the big tag match. They'll start, you know, trying to get Solo back on their side. But that's just bothering me. Also, it's a 2-on-1 beatdown. I didn't like that. Babyface is beating somebody up 2-on-1. Not a fan. Maybe they should have fought and then Solo just fled, like, you know, backed off and left. You know, instead of taking a beating, he instead got, you know, they threw some punches and then Solo rolled out of the ring, yelled at him. They yelled at him. There's an invisible line between them where they don't get, you know, in each other's faces too much. Maybe Paul gets in the way and says, no, don't do it. Which would have been perfect given the story that they were telling earlier about how Paul is the one who is driving the wedge in the family. If Paul was trying to prevent Solo from fighting his brothers, that could have been ammunition for Paul later to say, what do you mean I was driving the wedge? When you were about to beat up your little brother, I said, no, nobody should fight. This is not a good idea. But they chose to just beat him up. So there it is, I guess. But overall, I think the Usos made the show peak early because they were really good. And their storyline makes sense. Again, the whole thing with Solo just going unaddressed bothers me and I don't like it. Sorry, I don't like it. Rey Mysterio loses to LA Knight. The only thing I don't like about this is that LA Knight won clean. I'm starting to feel aggy about heels winning without cheating. Anyway, LA Knight was about to continue beating up Rey Mysterio after the match when Santos Escobar chased him off, which is fine. Infinitely better than the triple threat idea they had planned. Rey Mysterio almost botched a move and almost landed on his head. Thankfully, his hands were there. So he ended up being okay. But the match was fine. It wasn't too bad. Now, the women's tag team unification match, Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler defeated Isla Dawn and Alba Fire. This was probably the second longest match on the show. It's the lack of care that the audience gives to Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. You'd think it was Natalya and Dana Brooke. They don't give a damn at all about Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. They do not care. So it was announced that the winners will be defending the titles over all three brands. Not going to do them any good, though. It just is what it is. Isla Dawn and Alba Fire didn't even really get out of the box. I mean, they did some stuff. Alba Fire did a really cool swanton bomb from the top rope on top of Shayna Baszler while Shayna Baszler had Isla Dawn and a coquina clutch or whatever and ended up breaking it up. But the finish was essentially a double submission in which each member of Isla and Alba was in a submission hold and tapped out. I don't even see how that's legal, but it is what it is. Ronda Rousey getting no reaction. I don't know what happened. Like she has cratered, and it's getting worse and worse as we go along. Now Shayna's doing all the talking, which is it's a decision. It's a decision they decided to make to let Shayna Baszler do all the talking. But ultimately, Rousey and Baszler winning was. Did you think it was going any other way? I think the only way you would have got a pop out of this audience is if Isla Dawn and Alba Fire would have won. But sucks to be them because they got called up 2 months ago. They've done little to nothing and then immediately lost their belts. So that sucks. Raquel Rodriguez was sitting at ringside. The same Raquel Rodriguez that we were teasing to be feuding with Rhea Ripley recently. She is now on SmackDown cheesing while watching Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. So she was walking away when I think it was Ronda Rousey called her out, or was it Shayna Baszler? It was one of the two. And asked her what she's even doing out there. So she said that she came out to watch the match and that we want their rematch. She's like, who is we? Of course, they talked about how they destroyed everybody in the division. The division is dead. And then out comes Liv Morgan. So Liv Morgan is healthy again. And they do the big stare down where Liv is staring, I don't know if it was Ronda or Shayna. And she was staring at her eye to eye. And I wasn't paying attention at the time. But I was like, wait a minute. What's going on here? So then I go on. I know Liv is not, no, she's tiny. I go on the Twitter and I see Liv Morgan in these disco stew ass boots. That's like, they're the highest boots. She could put goldfish in those boots. Boots high as hell. Chris Jericho will wear those boots. Lenny Kravitz will wear those boots. Those boots made her so damn tall. I'm like, what is going on? I knew something was off when she was staring eye to eye with people. I'm like, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. I know some funny business going on right now. But Liv Morgan is back. Not like it matters. You know, this tag team thing is not going to work out. And Raquel and Liv shouldn't win. In fact, I'm not sure what should happen. If we being honest, I think we better off with Raquel continuing her chase of Rhea Ripley. I think Liv Morgan should probably do something else. You know, maybe the singles division on SmackDown, maybe. But that depends on what they're going to do with that title. If Asuka's going to keep it, then Liv Morgan is a fine opponent for Asuka. Because Asuka is short, Liv is short. You know, I'm pretty sure Asuka could drag a decent match out of her. But I don't like this tag team thing. It kind of sucks. All right. Moving on. Grayson Waller effect featuring Pretty Deadly. Another mid-ass Grayson Waller effect. These things are awful. All right. They're getting terrible now. And they're doing another one next week. Grayson Waller, they're trying to get Grayson Waller over as a character, but they won't let him get over. They keep making these segments all about the guest. Like, the point of the talk show is to get over the talker. That's the secret to, like, the Piper's Pit or the Heartbreak Hotel or whatever. The secret is that the host makes it all about himself. That's the secret to the sauce of this. You know, you think you're the guest, but in reality, it's all about the host. You know, but in these, Grayson Waller basically puts over whatever heel he's talking to. And then he kind of steps out of the scene and he just lets them do their thing. And that's exactly here when it comes to Pretty Deadly is they went on and on about how they beat 5 teams and that they don't think that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn take them seriously. That why are people surprised or confused when they won championships on their debut, when they unified championships in this company? They're the best tag team. They're the Iron Men of SmackDown and all this kind of stuff. And look, I love Pretty Deadly, but they needed to be more obnoxious. And this was an opportunity for Grayson Waller to be obnoxious too. And the good people of Lafayette, who, let's be honest, if you're from Lafayette, I'm so sorry, but these are routinely some of the worst crowds when it comes to WWE TV. Lafayette, Louisiana is like awful for television. And they go there at least twice a year. I don't get it. It is not an A town. It's not a B town. It's not even a C town. I don't know. Just run somewhere else, please. Because the crowds don't care. And Pretty Deadly were trying to get people to care. But it didn't work. It failed. And then we got a fail match. Pretty Deadly versus the Street Profits. The Street Profits came out and said they're going to properly introduce the smoke to Pretty Deadly. And then promptly lost, which is all the time. It even had Montez Ford put on my man's little shoulder shirt, which was hilarious. Like, the shoulder shirt is hilarious. The match was fine for what it was, but the Street Profits being used as enhancement talent is, the point of an enhancement talent is to put over other people. Like, what happened to just regular jobber matches? Especially if these matches are going to be short for television. Just have a guy wrestle a jobber tag team, do all their best stuff, and then cut their promo afterwards. Why can't we structure a wrestling show like that anymore? You know, you really only need the idea of quote unquote stars wrestling stars. Like, I think we can back down on that, you know, because nobody really cares what happens on these shows anymore. You know, half the time it's people nobody cares about versus people nobody cares about. Or the crowd reacts, but only to the entrance and then the finish, and that's it. They don't really react to anything else. Like, when Pretty Deadly beat the Street Profits, they might as well have beat Jobber Tag Team A or B. Like, it literally didn't mean anything. Especially since the Street Profits almost never fucking win anyway. You know, they lose all the goddamn time. They just lost last week. So, I mean, we need to go back to jobbers. We need to go back to enhancement talent and stop treating guys who are at least solid mid-carders this way. It's just, it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't make anybody look good because eventually that talent, the salaried talent, they simply don't have any credibility anymore. And then this constant 50-50 booking and the up and down and the up and down, why deal with that? You know, just get some fucking enhancement talent. I know why they don't do it, and I'll explain in a second, but just get fucking enhancement talent. Now, the reason they don't use enhancement talent that often is because there's sketchy quality to enhancement talent. You know, this was a problem when WWE kept getting sued in the 90s for jobbers getting hurt or whatever. As people were like, jobbers don't know how to take a move. You know, that's how the guy took the rocker dropper wrong and ended up costing WWE millions of dollars. And then there was that other idiot who took a pedigree like a power driver and almost died. You know, that kind of stuff happens. You know, the jobbers became of sketchy quality, so you couldn't really rely on those guys being any good. So they just decided, we're just going to turn some of our salary guys into jobbers, and that doesn't make much sense. I wouldn't even bother doing that. Anyway, Lacey Evans defeated by Charlotte Flair. Charlotte did the tranquilo after the match and then got jumped by Asuka, who just put the boots to her and then danced away. This would have been like a perfect time for Bianca to attack Asuka from behind or something to that effect, but they decided not to do that. Instead, they decided to do a segment in which Adam Pearce expressed that he's concerned that Bianca would be a distraction to Asuka and Charlotte, so she is banned from ringside. So Bianca is salty that her idea of sitting ringside to watch this match to make sure nobody else jumps the line is being thwarted by Adam Pearce, who is seemingly just a puppet of some larger other power, it seems like. They really are teasing dissension between Pearce and Bianca, which some people think is going to turn Bianca heel, but if you look at some of the decisions that Adam Pearce is making, it should turn him heel, if we're being honest. Like, how are you going to ban her from ringside and she hasn't done anything yet? You know, like, she's banned from ringside because of the possibility that these people could get in, you know, she could be a distraction. Meanwhile, Roman Reigns gets to have everybody at ringside, and they have proven that they're going to interfere every single goddamn time. From Paul to Solo to the Usos, everybody. And Scarlett interferes all the time. She's never banned from ringside. Everybody, Bianca gets banned from ringside before she does anything. Everybody else cheats literally all the goddamn time, and they still get to be at ringside. That doesn't make sense. You know, there's something to be said about, again, internal rules and regulations for your wrestling show. But I'm okay generally with the reasoning why she was banned from ringside. It's just that it doesn't apply to anybody else. You know, like, people who have proven that they're going to get involved don't get banned, you know, but she got banned. That's weird, you know. So, but it at least cuts us off from the old trope of Charlotte's going to throw Asuka into Bianca, and then Bianca's going to punch Asuka. It's going to be a disqualification, and then they're going to fight. At least it escapes that, because that sucks, and I don't like that. And every time somebody does a special guest referee or special guest commentator or whatever, it's inevitable that they're going over the table and going to land into the somebody's going over the table. They're going to land into the lap of the special guest, who is going to then overreact. The ref's going to see it. It's going to be a disqualification, or it's going to cause somebody to lose, and then there's going to be some bitching afterwards. So they're trying to avoid all that, and it seems like they're trying to have a sort of clean winner in terms of Asuka and Charlotte. And it's looking like it's going to be Charlotte. That's what it's looking like. It's looking like it's going to end up being Charlotte from here. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. It might be, but that's what it's looking like. And that's very unfortunate. So that's SmackDown. The show was terrible, if we're being honest. It wasn't a lot. You know, it was very light in terms of things that happened on the show. But that's where they made it terrible. Question. Where is Austin Theory? What is he doing? See, he wrestled Jey Uso, 3 weeks ago? And he has not appeared since. He has not bragged about beating him. He hasn't done anything yet. You would think that, again, the guy who won Money in the Bank last year, not in Money in the Bank this year. He's a United States champion. He's not defending the title at the show. He's not even defending the title the day before the show. He has nothing to do with this show. He is completely, absent from this show. AJ Styles, absent from this show. Lashley, absent from this show. Karrion Kross, absent from this show. Now, I will say this. I ragged on Bayley and Shotzi earlier and said that the match didn't really matter that much and who the hell cares really. And I still maintain that opinion, so I'm not flip-flopping. I will say, however, they did not touch on the women's Money in the Bank at all on this show. Zelina Vega didn't show up at all. And no other member of the women's Money in the Bank match showed up at all on this show either. So it was almost as if, it was an afterthought. Now, Asuka did make an appearance, but she didn't cut a promo or do anything, which is not to Asuka's strength anyhow. So, it is what it is. But to have guys like Lashley and Karrion Kross and Austin Theory, who are dudes who you could do stuff with, to have them just sitting at home or sitting backstage doing nothing, it's a crime, yo. Like, I've heard that there's some whispers about a Lashley Karrion Kross feud, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. That sounds interesting. When are they going to do that? Where has Lashley been? Is he hurt? If he's been hurt, just let's say he's hurt. Where is he? Where's Austin Theory? Is he hurt? It just doesn't make sense. So when you tell me that, Vince canceled Bayley and Shotzi, I'm like, I don't care. Karrion Kross is not on this show. AJ Styles is not on this show. Lashley's not on this show. Like, why are there so many people who are, I'm supposed to care about Baron Corbin and Cameron Grimes getting cut? Austin Theory's been getting cut every damn week. He ain't been able to do nothing. They keep forgetting he has a title. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's terrible. And this goes to show how much the Bloodline story has been carrying SmackDown. Like, it's really been dragging SmackDown lately. That Bloodline story has really been carrying SmackDown. No wonder they're juicing the hell out of it. And guess what? It's still the best stuff on TV, so I ain't mad at it. But they could definitely use the guys that they have better right now. And something got to change on the SmackDown creative end. The women's championship it's all about Charlotte now, so who knows. But now you've decided to get rid of the SmackDown tag team titles, and now it's one set of tag team champions, but Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn didn't show up on this show either. So, of course it was light, so whatever. Let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.